Hey everybody, I'm talking across the internet, across the Tasman with Guy Lawrence. He may sound Welsh, but he lives in the beautiful Byron Bay, which is somewhere that Alex and I are hoping to camp up at some point. Guy, what have you been up to this weekend, mate?
This weekend, boy, this was my first weekend I've had off since all of January, because I spent the last other weekends literally doing workshops around the country and getting there back and forth and so forth. So this weekend, my goal was to do as little as possible. So myself and my wife, we went for a couple of magic breakfasts and walks and near the beach in the morning, and we always try and get in nature. And what else did we do? And we literally just hang out. I read a lot as well. So it was the first one in 4 weeks. And I literally had 3 weeks of Costa Rica before that, which was actually quite full on as well. So it's been, yeah, it was quite a boring weekend, actually, of all ones. If you asked me the week before, I could have said something very different.
No. And so you're quite an active rester then?
I'm a very active rester, totally. I really force myself to try and rest sometimes. And then you can even feel the body going, nah, I want to do things. But I've just learned in life that sometimes you just need to honor that a little bit more, where probably 5 years ago, 10 years ago, I probably would just keep pushing and then wonder why I would burn out or something would happen a little bit further down the line, you know.
Nice, mate. You touched Costa Rica. We've had plenty of people come on the podcast that have had amazing experiences down in South America. What was Costa Rica like for 3 weeks for you, man?
It couldn't have come at a better time. It was magical. I think I went there carrying, over a year of like full onness with 180 nutrition and everything else. And myself and my wife, I booked in basically a Joe Dispenza retreat. So it's quite a small, intimate retreat. And, Dr. Joe Dispenza has had a big influence in my life and his work over the last probably 3 years, something like that. And when I saw we had an opportunity to go Central America, which I've never done before. And I also had a couple of good friends that from all different parts of the world that we just rarely never connect enough. We're going to this retreat. So let's just go, let's do it. Let's have a week with that. And then it was 2 weeks then, including travel time all up, but just exploring, the peninsula on the Costa Rica, which is a blue zone as well. I don't know if you've covered blue zones before in Nicoya down there in Costa Rica. So it had all the boxes. And then when you throw in some jungle, some crystal clear ocean, really friendly, beautiful local people. And it was just amazing. I would highly recommend anyone to check out Costa Rica, man. Yeah, you got to give it a go.
Absolutely. No, I'm not familiar. What was the retreat about, buddy?
Wow. So the retreat was called, what was it called? So it's essentially about, it was called Information to Transformation. So it was literally, it was just before Christmas. You could say it was a meditation retreat, but Joe, he teaches a lot around quantum physics and biology and the change of what goes on with the body as well. So you start looking at how we can start to, I guess, step into our future selves, and you can go there, and it's a perfect time to get away from the distractions of the world, from, the people, the things, the familiarity of your life, and go somewhere completely different. Get rid of all that distraction, start to take stock, reflect, educate yourself, have fun, and actually do some deep sort of inward work, if you like. And people that go to these retreats have already been doing the work a long time. So it's not like the training wheels are off. This is where you kind of go once you're familiar with it, and it's very, very powerful. I love it. And it you can, if you sort of surrender to that week and quieten down the chatter and start to really have the courage to look within, I think you can really start to create some shifts, and I certainly did for me and most of the guys that were within the retreat. But we still managed to have a shot of tequila every now and then within the 7 days as well.
So that's 1 month ago. Have you sort of noticed anything creep into your life that's striking you, or do you think it's going to be something that gradually blossoms? And
it's both. It's both. Already, I've made massive changes. Like I've come back, and there's almost there's so much power in making some internal decisions when you commit 100%. I think we kind of flirt and we love the ideas of creating change and wanting to go in different directions and do different things, but we stick to the familiar. We want to stick to the known because that's where we draw comfort from, and the unknown is very unpredictable and uncertain, and there's all these elements that start to come around it, and one of them, of course, being fear. But we kind of hold on to that for as long as we can, generally, until the pain is great enough. And I've learned from many, many times in life that you don't wait till the pain is great enough. You just wait until the oil light is just starting to flash on the car, and then you actually stop and change the oil. You don't wait till the engine blows. And I'm going off on a tangent here, but when you kind of had enough experience with that and you go to something like this and you kind of make some declarations and you're doing it with intimate people that are holding you accountable, that we still hold each other accountable to, you're like all in. And I came back, and my wife, she's made some massive changes as well. But for me, it was like I was all in with creating what I've been doing at the moment, my course with Let It In. And there was a lot of uncertainty and unknowns that are wrapped around that. And it's a completely different identity to what I've been known for the last 8 years of 180 Nutrition. But I was like, well, what have I got to lose? If I just come from the right place and use what I've learned so far to put it out there, let's just see what happens. Let's start doing that. And then when you put yourself out there into these positions, that's where the true work starts to kick in, because you have to start to observe how you're thinking, how you're feeling, how you're behaving, and actually what is real and what's actually how you're interpreting this situation. And they're actually two very different things when you start to break that down. So once you get to that point, and you can start to honor it, and you just keep edging. It's like you start edging your comfort zone anyway. You keep pushing the boundaries only to what you're capable of. It's pointless trying to bench press 100 kilos if you can only do 60. You do 61, and you keep pushing and you keep bounding, and then you retreat. Like I did the weekend. It's like I was push, and then retreat back. I hang out. I read. It's like, this is great. And then you get momentum, because we just kicked off the program yesterday for the 4 weeks. And now that time is pushing again now. And we got 54 of us going through it. So it'll be interesting to see. So that's challenging me and putting myself out there every single day with them all. So yes, changes like that come, but you still have to do it. You have to walk through it. You can't, the changes don't just land on your lap.
No, fantastic. So that ties in perfectly with our major kickoff question. Who is Guy Lawrence today?
Who is Guy Lawrence today? My most recent answer is, if people at least ask me what I do or whatever, I just go, I'm a treasure hunter.
Nice.
And then I normally get a look like, or explain. And it's like, well, I've had a really unique opportunity, especially with the 180 brand over the last 5 years, to go digging for gold and being exposed to people I think a lot of people just don't have the opportunity to be exposed to on a day-to-day basis. And not only that, I've then gone and tried to work with them and spend time with them and actually make head to tail of what's going on, because I've had my beliefs shattered so many times, especially around the health industry and what we've had indoctrinated in us for many years. I grew up in a low-fat era and counting calories, and the sports industry. There's all these things that are going around. So when people ask me, I just go, yeah, I'm a treasure hunter. I've gone mining for gold. I've come back, and I've actually set up a website and a program now outside of 180 to actually show and help people what those bits of gold were. And if you like the way I live my life or how I do or whatever, then this is what I did. I'm not saying it's the only way, and it's not necessarily the right way, but it's the way that worked for me. And if people resonate with that, then great, because I'm happy to show you, but you've just got to be willing to drop the ego and do the work. So that's what I say.
Fantastic. And gold is definitely what you found. I had to write some of these down because it's quite the rap sheet you guys had with the 180 Nutrition podcast. I've got Dom D'Agostino, Tim Noakes, Robert Lustig, Jason Fung, Chris Cruiser, Ben Greenfield, and that's why I'm standing up because of that podcast. Wim Hof and Justin Smith is what I've got through so far. It's absolute gold.
Yeah.
And I'm just starting off. We're at episode, I think, 22 now.
Mm-hmm.
What are some tips that you'd say for anybody starting out on a gold mining journey? What sort of?
I think the biggest lessons is do it for the right reasons. I think, and actually forget about the numbers and forget about trying to hit the biggest names to get exposure, and hopefully they'll tweet it out or whatever. And the next thing you know, you're gonna have 1 million downloads and all this. Like, forget all about that. Like, I think, and believe me, I've been sidetracked many times and had to check myself and pull myself back in and so forth. But I think the first tip is make sure your intention behind everything is truly honorable and in line with what you want to do. And, people, especially people with bigger profiles, they see it all the time. They get pitched at all the time. They know what's going on all the time. And I think for me as well, the one thing I did quite naturally was try and create a win-win situation. And I heard Gary Vaynerchuk actually speak about it once, about bartering for sort of equal value of what you're doing. So it's like
he goes 51-49.
Yeah, exactly. But I think as well, I certainly didn't go after like Chris Kresser or Tim Noakes. It was like I wanted to feel like how could I get myself into a position first where I knew if I went to them, they're going to have to say yes. They're going to have to come on. And I almost felt like I needed to earn the right, even to be a good interviewer and make these people feel as comfortable as possible. Like, there was all these things going through me. And so it was definitely a case of, it's not about me, it's about them and we, and probably me last. Yeah. And that's very difficult to do. It's so something I contemplated a lot as I've gotten older. Because you do, like, you want to obviously grow a business, you want to grow a podcast, you want to grow a reach, and you want to do all these wonderful things with it. But at the same time, there's a patience behind it. There's a consistency. It's like, you got to prove it to yourself as well, that you're worthy. And I think we can lose sidetrack of that sometimes. Like, I'll get pitched quite often, but I'll always check it out and make sure and want to be able to fit it in. But at the same time, I there's an element that is great to give back as well, no matter what. So I think they're probably the tips. Keep it consistent. If you're going to do a weekly podcast, fortnightly podcast, try and be consistent, chip away, stick to a good format, have fun with it. Don't take it all too seriously, even though some of the topics are serious. And and just see what happens, because magic happens. Like we've had viral downloads and things go off, and you can't plan it, you can't foresee it, you got no idea, you got no how a guest is going to respond. I mean, there's one guy on that list that you need to listen to. There's two actually. Well, there's Joe Dispenza, who we've interviewed twice, and Bruce Lipton as well. And Bruce Lipton is probably still our strongest interview we ever did. And it took me about 18 months to get him on, really. And when he came on, like, I had no idea what to expect. I remember being really nervous because he was a hero of mine. I'd read his book, Biology of Belief, multiple times. And he came on and just magic happened. Like this, it was just like, this is unbelievable. I was pinching myself. It went on for like an hour and 20 minutes. We got off at the other end and I was like, that is what it's all about. That is, I don't care. It was just amazing. And interestingly enough as well, that became one of our most downloaded podcasts. And we've had so many emails coming back from that. People going, oh my God, I never thought of it like that before. That just makes so much sense, makes the way I look at myself differently and everything. So it's magic, but it's hard work as well. I think, 10 podcast episodes in, great. 100 in, it's a different story,
Wow. Yeah. And I did listen to that one yesterday, and you're exactly right. I loved what he said about how 40 years ago he got taught the lesson of it's about the environment and the substrate, and turned it around to it's about our biology and what we're doing and what we're thinking. It's controlling our body.
Absolutely. We're the best chemists in the world ourselves.
Yeah.
Well, and yes, we need support with that quite often, but then what's producing the chemistry and quite often is the way we're perceiving our situation, and our body's responding accordingly, which is quite amazing when you think about it.
Fantastic. And so I read your bio on your new page about Let It In, and you said on there that you were 33 and 30 grand in debt trying to play the stock market.
Yeah.
I'll start off with one question. What were you say now you're a treasure hunter and you're probably doing a lot better. What was the motivation for trying the stock market at that age group?
I just got to Australia. I never believed. I spent my 20s adrift, not being able to settle into anything because I had a lot of beliefs at the time that I didn't realize about commitment, and I never believed I could actually go after something that I wanted to truly achieve in life and succeed. Mm-hmm. I just have been indoctrinated from a young age that you have to work hard. That's how you earn your money, and that's how you go forth. And then if you're lucky, you can have, a Saturday night out and enjoy yourself and have a beer kind of thing. And that was the kind of thing and that belief was running within me all the time. And because it scared me so much, I was actually too frightened to commit to anything. Relationships, buying a house, or anything that was going to keep me locked in. So I just freaked out and just spent my years traveling, very unhappy and lonely, to be honest with you. So when I emigrated, and again, that was the oil light flashing on the car, but the pain was getting greater and greater and greater. And I went to, when I emigrated to Australia, I really wanted to change. I really wanted to make a fresh start, but I still didn't know what I wanted to do with myself, even though I was really passionate about health, sports, and fitness. It was kind of the irony. And then when I got involved in different seminars around wealth and wealth creation, and the irony was I'd never even knew what it was like to have 30 grand in my account my whole life, seriously, things came hard. And I looked at stock trading, day trading, and there were people saying that, you can make a good living from this, you can do this well. And it was all very kind of well presented and so forth. And then I had in my head, well, if I can go and do this, put my full 100% energy into it, make money, then I'll be happy. Then I can go and do something I love. And I completely missed the point. But I didn't have the money. And while I was emigrating, I literally borrowed money, and I borrowed equity off my parents' house at the time, they weren't even in a position to do it. But so to allow me to emigrate, to get an education around trading, some independent private courses, and then use the money. And then over 3 years, I put everything into it I ever had, like my heart, my soul, but it was getting ridiculous. Like I was trading up to like 3 o'clock in the morning sometimes, and then having to cycle to the city the next morning at 6 a.m. to do my personal training with clients. It was like this double life I was living. And I spent 3 years giving it everything. And it was probably the hardest decision of my life to walk away from that, because I actually believed I was going to make it work. But looking back, and with the work I've learned now since with Joe Dispenza and looking at neuroscience and that, I was misaligned. I was misaligned with what was, I guess, within my heart and soul to what I was telling myself I needed to do. So I had this incongruency, and it was never going to work. And then what I realized is that you need to have that aligned if you really want to make some magic happen. But it was my greatest lesson of my life. It put me in a situation where I was literally backed in a corner, and I didn't know what to do, but it forced me to actually look at my life, look at what I wanted, what I should be actually grateful for. And that's when things started to change, and that's when shifts started to happen. And a couple of years later, 180 Nutrition was born out of that. So you know, without that 180 wouldn't have happened. So it's been an interesting journey.
Absolutely. And, you know, lots of people get asked, you know, what would they change about their 20s? And of course, they wouldn't be here without those experiences. And one of my first blogs that I started doing was when I was sort of 2 years out of university and still looking at myself going, I'm still in a financial position similar to when I was at uni. And I actually drew some parallels between waves on the beach and the tide, and that, you know, you get income coming in and it slowly goes out again, but then it starts to build up. How did you sort of turn your income status around it, and what sort of self-talk did you have to keep on going and not stop in?
Man, that was hard. But again, you grow from it. The one thing I realized a couple of years in from that, when I was really going into the transformation and change, was that, and you know, you got to remember, by this time I'm like 33, right? 34. I was living in South Coogee, one of the wealthiest areas in Sydney. I mean, I was living in the only sort of unrenovated house, leaning like this, but there were 4 lads in there. 2 of them had just been divorced from their wives, right? Yeah. And there was me and another guy that just smoked pot all day. It was beautiful humor, but like, you know, and we were in this house in South Coogee overlooking the beach, and we were in this magical area, paying minimal rent. It was kind of this weird dynamic, but everyone I knew had a career, had nice cars, like went out for dinners at night, went out, and I was literally scraping by on $500 a week, putting everything I had into trading. And then when that changed, not committing to a job because I was trying to commit to 180, right? And then, you know, you got to question it. Are you just jumping from one stone to the other and avoiding, or do you actually believe this is the thing you should be doing? So you got all that to contend with, and you compare. You can, like, and it's a sorry feeling. So to try and get through that and have resilience is pretty hard, and stay true to yourself. But for me, I realized a couple of years in after the shift, what was I going to do? I'm backed in a corner. It's like, well, you got to deal with it, because I'd burnt my ships. I didn't have an option. So I was 100% in. Most people don't have that for a start, right? Yeah. They've got, I don't know, parents, family that can help them out, turn to this, turn to that, you know. And if you don't have that, you got to figure it out. You know, there's no way around it. So that was the first thing. And the other thing was that just because I wasn't changing monetarily, I knew I was changing. And money is literally just a response, one kind of response to the internal changes that are happening. So if you're only measuring yourself by your financial success, then you are going to be in trouble, I believe, in life. You know, the success is not just financial. If you're just doing it for that, that is just purely ego-driven, because you want to slot into your society or whatever it is and feel good around your mates or whatever that be, even on a subconscious level. So I think once I started to realize that and honor that, I started to feel, no, I've got this. And I would read voraciously. I would listen to audiobooks ferociously. I would seek people, and because I didn't really have them in my my close network, not many, there were a few, but not many. I used to look for people that were living the life that I wanted to live. So I would start from a spiritual aspect to a financial aspect to success or whatever it be. So I would listen to audiobooks spiritually from Deepak Chopra, Wayne Dyer, Stuart Wilde, Eckhart Tolle. Like, these guys were just going in my ears, in between my ears the whole time when I had downtime. And I used to go for long walks. I was cycling 25 Ks a day, right? So I'd have audiobooks between my ears all the time. Then financial books, then to self-help like Tony Robbins and stuff. And that will always help me come back to strong. So even though you have all these elements that are actually, life is throwing them at you constantly, and you can get swayed very quickly. There was always that, because I had no safety net and I had burnt my ships. There was always that underlying thing that I've just got to keep going. I've just got to keep going. There's no other way around it. And I just kept going. But then, probably the biggest thing that I learned was gratitude. actually getting out of your own story, getting out of your own victimization, and actually coming from a place of gratitude daily. And the moment that penny dropped for me was the moment shifts started to happen much quicker. And I literally just put a little video up in my Facebook group yesterday about the two greatest ingredients to achieve any success. And I believe it's them two things: A, being uncomfortable, and B, being grateful for it, and coming from a place of gratitude. And they're a great mix. And if you want it bad enough, I believe you can achieve it. But you've got to tap into resources you never knew you had. You didn't even know, because you've never done it before. And when you start to overcome those small wins as well, you get momentum, you get confidence, and then you start to see light at the end of the tunnel, and then it inspires you just to keep going. I think, shit, if I did that, what else can I do? Wow, if I did that, what else can I do? And all of a sudden, from being in this very dark place where life sucks and you just keep going, and it sucks and you keep going because you can't get out of it anyway, it slowly starts to break. And as you push through that, then things can come. I'll just make sure my phone's off. I don't know if that helps.
No, thanks so much, mate. That was hugely powerful. Now, one of my sort of turning points in life was when I finished university, and I watched a video. It wasn't by Simon Sinek, but it was about finding your purpose and how you find that purpose. And what I ended up coming to was improving people's life. Now, for optometry, that's through giving them the gift of sight, or preventing them from losing their gift of sight. What sort of drove 180 Nutrition forward? And you spoke about the over your lifetime being possibly lied to or misdirected by the health and fitness industry. What was keeping 180 Nutrition going forward?
So what literally lit the spark was being amongst people with cancer. Wow. So I during that whole dark period, that time in my life where, I ended up being involved with a charity that were helping people with cancer, but using weight training and nutrition. And this was back in 2007, probably 2008, so at least 10 years ago. And I was fresh into the fitness industry. I'd just been taught the food pyramid, carb loading, counting calories, and multiple things. And while certain things have their place, then that was in the kind of, it wasn't the real world. Like, I was in the gym, I was in a great place in the uni, and it was that, but I was just dealing with athletes and different people coming in, but then when I was surrounded by people that, in a weekend, actually, there were 30 odd people, they all had cancer, and some were seriously heavy cases. And here they were talking outside the realms of the medical industry itself, which was the traditional chemo route and so forth. And they were talking about nutrition, they were talking about weight training, they were talking about mindset and different strategies to help build the immune system and help these people. And at the time, they were basically cutting all processed foods out. They were basically cutting out of what most of the people I knew were eating on a daily basis. And that just blew my mind. And, ketogenic wasn't talked about much at the time. Paleo wasn't talked about. Cutting sugar out your diet wasn't even talked about back then. But yet here they were increasing their fats, pulling out the foods. They were bringing in naturopaths as well to look at their digestive, look at their gut health, and all these things that were not being spoken about. Not even, and we didn't have podcasts so much back then either. You got to remember, right? So I was just blown away. I couldn't believe it. My whole carpet was pulled up from under my feet, and there were just assumptions that I just took in life from a young age that you just believe to be true, and you don't question them, and they slip in your subconscious, and then you live your life based upon them. But the moment you get one or two shattered, like, your whole paradigm shifts, and the way you start to see things shift, and you think, shit, if they're wrong about that, what else could they be wrong about? And now it's finally starting to come out. The information is definitely changing, but at what pace, I don't know. So I kind of came back from that and thought, I've got nothing to feel sorry for in my life. I've got it good. I've got my health. Like every single person in that room I met would have traded places for me, even though I was stuck in my bullshit story and carrying on, you know, and it just, something snapped at me. It changed. I physically remember it changing, thinking, right, I'm gonna change this. And I read the 4-Hour Work Week not long after, because I was reading Tim Ferriss's book, you know, back probably 2008, and I just thought, what if this guy's telling me I can do it, then why can't I do it? You know, but it all felt right. Everything felt aligned, where when I was trading, it felt misaligned. And I knew it. I just couldn't put my finger on it. But this time, everything felt aligned. I was like, you know, I'm in the fitness industry because I love it. Nobody is talking about this. Like, I looked at the protein supplements that we were selling in the university, and it was just full of crap. And, you know, and it was like, oh, the curtain had been lifted. And I was like, oh my God, what is everybody doing? Why can't I see this? So that's where it started. And I even, from that point, my light nearly took me out then. From that point, just started chipping away and thinking, okay, what can I do? And at the time, I literally had no, you could say, no business skills, almost no right to be having a crack at it, because I didn't know what I was doing outside of that. Like, I knew the health industry, I knew my nutrition, I knew my fitness, I knew that, but to actually grow a business, I didn't have a clue. Absolutely no idea. Didn't know nothing about the internet, didn't know how to get a website, didn't know how to get a URL, didn't know how to record a podcast, nothing. And it drives me nuts when people say, oh, I just don't know. And, you know, and all these excuses and barriers start coming up. And you think, oh, you know, I'm sorry, I just don't buy it. I don't buy it.
Right, and that's why I love sharing stories such as yourself, because if you can prove to someone that they are just a barrier in a mental state, then maybe it might get them to change one thing, and like you say, one thing creates another thing, and the snowball effect happens.
100%, yeah.
You said it was you knew the background but not the business side of things. What did you sort of do to gain that information? Was there any mentors, or was it all, like you say, external mentors that you tapped into?
Later on, there were mentors for sure, as we started to actually make some money. But at the time, remember, I was in debt. Like I couldn't even put any money into the business of it. Nothing. You know, I was like, how am I going to do this? So the first thing I needed to do was see if the concept would work. And I was working at the uni full time at the time at the gym there, and I spoke to the management and said, look, I really love this idea, because they knew I'd been going back and forth and looking at these people with cancer. And actually I ended up even working with a couple of people with cancer at the gym from the back end of it, right, with the weight training programs and stuff. And I said, I got this great idea and I want to see if I can change the culture of this gym, basically. Right. That was my first starting point. And they're like, yeah, we'll back you. So what is it? And at the time it was the 180 protein superfood, but it was unbranded. It was nothing. And I went to the guys that were making it for the cancer patients up north, and they were kind of making it more for people that with illness, not for people with the fitness industry. And I approached them and said, look, could we increase, I know how these guys think, I want to increase the protein intake, make it more appealing, but they're still getting a natural product instead of the synthetic crap that they take in. And they said, yeah, but you know, you have to buy $5,000 worth, you know. And I'm like, I don't have a cent, you know. So it was like barrier number one, you know. And what would most people do? They would go, oh, I'll go and save up and I'll come back to you in 6 months or a year and maybe we can make it work then. You know, that was the mentality. It could have been so easily, but where I was at, I was like, well, I'm not accepting that. You know, I've got to make this work. I knew this is what I needed to do. So I then speak to management and I said, look, I need you to stock some. So I'm going to start distributing this, but you have to stock it. And they said, well, how much do you want us to get in? I said, $5,000 worth. And they were like, oh my God. So I basically worked this 3-way deal, leveraging off everyone. And I got the product in there and I had about, I think 60 days to pay it back or something like that. So then I thought, right, let's see if I can make it work. And I shifted a lot.
Awesome. And it's something that you hear from Tim Ferriss, and I think it was mostly talked about when he talked with Richard Branson, and it's about bringing down your downside, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I thought, you know what, I'm in debt. What's another $5,000 anyway? Who cares? Like, you know, it was literally that day, and let's see if I could get this work. And I gave it to a few of the influencers in the gym, the guys that would come in, were on the Olympic bars, that lifted heavy, had a lot of respect in there. At first, there was that crew that I sort of gave, and I said, look, just swap this for a month, just see. And they started talking because their digestion was improving. It was more fibrous. The, you know, inflammation was dropping. Like, there was just things going on, and it wasn't exactly a miracle, but to them, it kind of was like, holy shit. And then from there, I could see I was getting momentum, even with my own one-on-one clients, and I would really talk to them about it and make them understand why they were doing it and all the rest of it. And then from there, I literally so I read Tim's book about 5 times. I read Gary Vaynerchuk's Crush It over and over and over again, because he was telling you about getting your personal brand out there, your identity. You know, you got to make noise, and that's what we started doing. I then 2 years in, I was still struggling with the internet skills per se initially, but then who then became my business partner, Stu, was graphic design background. He understood coding a little bit and so forth. So all of a sudden, we built a website very quickly. We had a brand quite quickly, and then combined, kept pushing. But I kept devouring blog posts, podcasts, and people all around the social media scene, just trying to understand and make head to tail of it. And then once I started to go, okay, I get the hang of this now, started driving content out there. I started making noise. And then, you know, we'd have the odd tweet here and there from somebody well known. So it was good, you know, but you have to write from the heart. Like, I was pouring everything into that content. And for a while, it feels like you're sending it into outer space and nobody's reading it. Like, it's just this void. But people are reading, people are listening. And if you give it enough energy, yeah, I think you can make things shift. And then I started the podcast in 2013. And that's when I think from that point, we started to get more, I guess, authority and respect and a differentiation. And then from about 2018, 2014, competitors started coming in. So before that, we were the only ones doing this, and we had free reign. And I think, you know, within 3.5 years, like we said, we went from zero to essentially a multi-million-dollar turnover, and which just blew my mind. But at the same time, it taught me some invaluable lessons about honoring yourself, your heart, and just focusing on what you're actually trying to achieve. And I wasn't fazed about the money at that point at all.
Oh, nice. And you say about content, and I've mentioned one of the blokes that you've interviewed, Wim Hof. Some of the best content that I've seen from you guys for the last few months is a freezer that you guys have got water in.
Yes.
What the hell are you guys up to? I love it, and I know what you're up to. But for those out there, what is a freezer full of water going to do for you?
Freezer full of water of ice that we get in once a week.
Yeah.
And it's quite funny because I'll turn up at my mate Andre's house who has the freezer, and the freezer is like a big chest freezer. So it's big enough to, like, I'm 6'4", right? So like it can swallow me up whole with just my head sticking out at the top. And I turn up in the morning and all I can hear is this bang, bang, bang. And that's Andre literally cracking the inch crust of ice on the freezer too long. So, and it's 0 to 1 degrees. So I just want to stress, it's as cold as you can get water, cold. There's no doubt about it. So yes, we jump in it once a week for 5 minutes. So I'll bring in a little backstory because I interviewed Wim Hof.
Yeah.
I'd read The 4-Hour Body with Tim Ferriss, and he was flirting, been talking about cold exposure and that. And I think that was my kind of first learnings of it, if you like. And then we were fortunate enough to be the first people in Australia to interview Wim. I remember reaching out to him to say, love to get you on. And he came on, and he was just a legend. And he said, oh, I'm coming to Australia. Now, if anyone's not familiar with Wim Hof, he's got 26 world records defying what the human body can do, and they're all related to cold. Like, he climbed Mount Everest in his shorts only, no oxygen mask. He got nearly almost way to the top, but he got lost, and he had to come back down. He's run a marathon in Finland in minus 20 degrees, barefoot in the snow. Like, he holds the endurance record for sitting in ice for an hour, and I think it's 53 or 56 minutes. Ridiculous. And, technically, Shelby, you should have hypothermia and die. But he's drawn a lot of attention to himself because of how we can actually influence what's called our autonomic nervous system. From that, where a lot of our immune system response stems from as well. So he's got a message about teaching people you can actually be healthy, happy, and strong. Now, I looked at this and was absolutely fascinated. So we ended up spending a week with Wim in Melbourne at this retreat. I think it was 60 of us or something. And it was like, I came out of that like I'd just been through a military camp or something, in terms of the harshness of the elements, of the ice, the wind, the rain, and breathing. And I'm going off on a tangent, but to cut it all the way back, it's cold exposure is a phenomenal tool to have in your toolkit of health to help the body operate at its optimum best. Cold exposure is a form of stress that could be too harsh and kill you, or you can leverage the stress to get a proper response within the body to help it become stronger. So it's like, it's just an adaptation. So obviously when we go weight training, or, we don't get fitter and stronger working out. We get fitter and stronger recovering from working out, because we have this stress, and then the body has to recover, and it responds, but it overcompensates and goes, shit, if you're going to make me push that weight, I'm going to be ready for you next time. So that's why you start to load things, and the body keeps having to adapt, but then you have to mix it up and so forth. Now, cold exposure is the same deal. If you control the environment to only what you can handle, which is not much for most people initially, the body will have to adapt to that cold exposure. And it's that adaptation can have amazing effects. And I feel so much better just by having one ice bath a week. I cannot tell you, hormonally, mentally, physically, I sleep better. The nervous system has to recover from it. It switches off, because we spend most of our time in, fight or flight in the sympathetic nervous system, and yet we need to get out of that. And cold exposure helps kick it out, like boom, back into parasympathetic, so it's wonderful. And the other big thing for it as well is mitochondria function. I don't want to go too technical, but mitochondria is like the battery for your cell, every single cell in your body. And if you've got no healthy mitochondria, you don't have a healthy cell. And if you don't have a healthy cell, you can have trouble. So actually making those little batteries have to light up and overwork to reheat your body is amazing. So I would encourage people to seriously check it out. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, and I always jump straight in the shower and be in the cold. And
have a cold shower. It must be cold in New Zealand, right?
It can be.
Yeah.
I'm from down the bottom of New Zealand, so people seem to think that I'm used to it, but cold is cold. Yeah.
Cold is cold. Yeah, totally.
And I'm conscious of the time, and you're a difficult person to ask what's something that you do that other people think is crazy. I'm currently doing something that people think is crazy. I had dinner last night at 6:30, and we haven't had anything to eat. That little coffee, again, something crazy with butter and coconut oil in it.
Yeah, okay.
Was the first thing I've had. What do you have anything else that people think is crazy for you? Because I'm sure the list is as long as your arm. But
yeah, look, do you know what? For the people are used to normally like these real strange antics or whatever. But I think I would have to say getting up before 5 a.m. every day. People think I'm a bit crazy for doing that. But it's my time of the day. It's magic. It's when I meditate, and I meditate up to an hour.
No.
But that didn't happen overnight. So if I tell people that, I do get odd looks going like, you work for yourself. Why aren't you laying in bed till 7 and so forth. But I think when you get this hunger that starts to burn inside, and you start to just have an appreciation for each day that you have here is a gift, and we forget that. Like, it's so easy, and we just because we're just on these automated patterns that we just run every day, habitual. We just expect everything to be the same every day. And then the moment it's not, we're in shock and go, oh, what? But life is not predictable, you know? And I think if you can just embrace that and get in there and make the most of that day. And for me, getting up, spending an hour on myself first, giving myself that time to just fill my own cup up and come alive and go, I want to make this day as great as I can. There's days I don't want to do it. People do think I'm crazy by doing it when the norm, but I'm not interested in the normal anymore. I did that for 33 years of my life, and it wasn't working that well for me. So I thought, well, why don't I just push the boundaries and see what I can do instead, and try and enjoy the unknown, the uncertainty of it all, and just try and better my life, but everyone around me as well at the same time, and just go see what happens. So that's probably the answer.
Nice, mate. And you spoke about writing something that you're grateful for earlier. That's something I put before I get started is 86,400 seconds every day and then start again is what I write before I get into that. And it's just a great reminder to keep
Totally. And just for anyone listening to this as well, just to let them know, I actually put together my 5-step morning routine that's available in my Facebook group. But if they just go back to my website, guylawrence.com.au, they can grab a copy of it. It's free. But that is how is, and yes, cold exposure is in that routine. But you know, I think it's crucial, because if you start your day right, then you can have a big impact on that day and not get caught up in the stuff that can get in the way, you know what I mean? And if you can start to get that right, then you can have a major impact long term of your life and the direction you want to go.
Absolutely. And is making the bed one of those as well?
Mate, it is. I make the bed every day.
Yeah.
I am one of the untidiest people I ever meet. I'm so right-brained. My head is just like in the clouds most of the time, and I just don't see stuff around me. Like, I drive my wife nuts. She's like, one day I'm gonna, like, I'll walk out without my keys and my phone, and then 3 hours I go, oh shit, I haven't got them, and I'm shocker. But I make the bed every day. I heard it once years ago about it's a great way to bring in a discipline, even though I don't feel like making it. I make it. Yeah. Absolutely.
Fantastic. So, just before we go, where can people find you? Obviously, you've got your poster in the background there. You've got something new in the world.
Yes.
Where can people check you down and get more Guy Lawrence? Because it's awesome, mate.
Yeah, thank you. The best place is guylawrence.com.au. I've recently stepped down from my day-to-day operations at 180 Nutrition. So I'm actually starting a new podcast as well called the Guy Lawrence Podcast. So that might be aired. I've actually got some really cool guests lined up already, so I'm very excited. But if you go to guylawrence.com.au, everything will be there, including the 5-step morning routine, which I encourage everyone to check out, and also Instagram. Guy H. Lawrence as well. I try and be as responsive as I can. Things do slip by in there. That's a new Instagram account I've just set up for myself recently, because I've just spent the last 8 years under a brand. So it'll be interesting to see where this goes. But I'm ready for the next chapter, and I want to inspire people for change. And I've literally just set up a program as well called Let It In, which is, I don't know when this will be aired, but the next 4-week course, it's online, it's interactive. We've currently got 54 people going through it. And it's just blown my mind, the response it's had, seeing just what I'm trying to do is bring like-minded people together and help them guide, facilitate change, and listen to their heart, and actually do some of the work that I've been fortunate to be taught, some of the gold I was teaching people, telling you about at the beginning, and bring people together through as a community. And I think that is so powerful. So probably May 2018 will be the next round. So if you're listening to this and it's before May, then come and check it out as well. So it'd be great to have you in there.
Fantastic, mate. And in your 180 Nutrition podcast, you talked about what was the best piece of advice someone ever gave you. What would be something that you'd like to pass on to people?
Oh, wow, that role's reversed. I used to just smile at them while I was watching them. Their brain think of what that would be. The same thing keeps coming back, and that's be true to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Like and we don't realize we're doing it half the time, is that we quite often live our lives for other people and we lose our identity along the way. And I think if you can get back to the essence of who we are, what is our truth, and start to live by that, and then allow other people to respond to that accordingly and not have to fit in just to meet other people's needs. Because if you're coming from heart, if your intentions are true and honorable, then the right people are going to gravitate to that anyway. And the people that don't like it are probably the people that you probably don't want in your life long term. So as I've honored that, my life has just kept getting better and better and better. And it's the scariest way to live, I promise you, but it is the most rewarding. And for me, 2018 is about continuing holding myself accountable to that, but then inspiring other people to do that too, who are ready to make the change. So be true to yourself. There you go.
Thanks so much, Guy. And I'll let you head off. It's been an absolute pleasure. Cheers, brother.
You're welcome, man. You're welcome. Thanks for having me.